The restaurant's ambient lighting cast a golden glow across the white tablecloths, but Jennifer Morris barely noticed the elegance surrounding her. She sat alone at table 12, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her untouched water glass as she checked her phone for the 5th time in 10 minutes. Her blind date was now 47 minutes late. Jennifer had reluctantly agreed to this setup after months of her best friend, Amanda's persistent encouragement. At 32, she had poured every ounce of energy into building her small graphic design business, leaving little room for romance. Amanda insisted that Jennifer needed to put herself out there, and had arranged this meeting with her cousin's colleague, a man named Trevor, who supposedly shared Jennifer's love for art and Italian cuisine. The waiter approached for the 3rd time, his polite smile growing increasingly strained. "Miss, are you ready to order, or would you prefer to wait a bit longer?" Jennifer's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. The couple at the neighboring table had already received their entrees, and she could feel their occasional sympathetic glances. "Just a few more minutes, please," she murmured, though her hope was rapidly dissolving. Her phone finally buzzed. Relief flooded through her until she read the message. "Sorry, something came up. Can't make it tonight. Good luck with everything." The casual dismissiveness of those words hit her like a slap. Not even an apology, not even a suggestion to reschedule. Jennifer blinked back the tears threatening to form, refusing to cry in such a public place. She had taken the afternoon off work, spent an hour choosing the perfect dress, a deep emerald number that brought out her hazel eyes, and even splurged on a salon blowout for her chestnut hair, all for someone who couldn't be bothered to show up or offer a decent explanation. "I'll take the check for the water," she told the waiter when he returned, her voice barely steady. As she reached for her purse, preparing to make the most dignified exit possible under the circumstances, a commotion near the restaurant's entrance drew everyone's attention. A tall man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit had entered, immediately surrounded by what appeared to be restaurant staff and several anxious-looking individuals in business attire. Jennifer recognized the telltale signs of someone important, the way people seemed to orbit around him, the hushed, urgent conversations, the manager personally greeting him. The man appeared to be in his late 30s, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples, and striking blue eyes that surveyed the room with an intensity that suggested he was accustomed to assessing situations quickly. There was something magnetic about his presence, a natural authority that commanded attention without effort. To Jennifer's surprise, his gaze landed on her table and held. For a moment that seemed to stretch impossibly long, their eyes met across the crowded restaurant. Then, to the visible shock of everyone in his entourage, he walked directly toward her. Jennifer's heart hammered in her chest. Had she accidentally taken a reserved table? Was she about to be asked to leave? But the man's expression wasn't angry. It was something else entirely, something she couldn't quite decipher. Determination, perhaps, mixed with what looked almost like relief. "Forgive the intrusion," he said, his voice deep and cultured with a hint of a British accent. "I'm Christopher Hawthorne. I know this will sound absolutely insane, but I need your help, and I'm prepared to make it worth your while." Jennifer stared at him, speechless. Christopher Hawthorne. Even she, who paid little attention to business news, recognized that name. He was the CEO of Hawthorne Industries, a technology conglomerate worth billions. His face had graced the cover of Forbes just last month, which Amanda had gleefully shown her while making another pitch for why Jennifer needed to date more. What?" Jennifer finally managed. Christopher glanced over his shoulder at his hovering associates, then back at her with what appeared to be genuine desperation in his eyes. "I'll explain everything, but first, I need you to do something completely mad. I need you to pretend to be my fiancé." Before Jennifer could respond, a woman from Christopher's group stepped forward, a severe-looking blonde in her 50s, wearing a designer suit and an expression of barely concealed horror. "Mr. Hawthorne, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "Not now, Patricia," Christopher said firmly, never taking his eyes off Jennifer. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down as if they had planned to meet all along. "Please," he said quietly, his voice urgent but not unkind. "I understand how this looks. I'm a stranger making a bizarre request. But there are 7 members of my board of directors having dinner in the private room upstairs, along with my grandmother, who has made it abundantly clear that she won't approve the merger we've been negotiating for 8 months unless I prove I'm settled down and serious about family. Jennifer's mind reeled. And you thought accosting a random woman in a restaurant was the solution? A flicker of what might have been amusement crossed Christopher's face. Not random. I saw you sitting here alone, and I saw your face when you read that message on your phone. You looked like someone who had just been profoundly let down. I apologize for the observation, but it gave me hope that you might understand desperation when you see it. This is insane, Jennifer said, but she didn't stand up to leave. Something about the raw honesty in his voice kept her seated. Completely insane, Christopher agreed, but I'm asking anyway. Have dinner with me. Meet my grandmother and my board. Pretend for 2 hours that we're engaged. In exchange, I'll pay you $50,000. Jennifer nearly choked. 50,000, and if you're particularly convincing, Christopher continued, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a small business card. I'll need you to maintain this charade for approximately 6 weeks, until the merger is finalized. For that, I'm prepared to offer you $500,000 and a contract that protects both of our interests. The restaurant seemed to tilt around Jennifer. $500,000. That was more than she had made in the last 3 years combined. That was enough to finally lease proper office space instead of working from her cramped apartment. That was enough to hire the assistant she desperately needed. That was enough to transform everything. Why me? She whispered. Christopher leaned forward slightly, and Jennifer caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. Because you're here. Because you look kind, despite having every reason to be angry right now. Because my grandmother will believe I fell for someone real, someone who doesn't attend charity galas or belong to country clubs. And because, quite frankly, I'm out of options and out of time. They're expecting me upstairs in 10 minutes, and they're expecting me to bring my fiancé. Patricia cleared her throat loudly. Sir, this is highly inadvisable. Everything worth doing is, Christopher said, still holding Jennifer's gaze. What do you say? Will you marry me at least for the next 6 weeks? The absurdity of the situation crashed over Jennifer like a wave. Here she was, humiliated by a man who couldn't even bother to show up for a blind date, and now a billionaire was proposing a fake engagement that could change her life. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was dangerous, reckless, potentially disastrous. But another part, the part that had taken chances to start her own business, the part that had always believed in seizing unexpected opportunities, whispered that sometimes the craziest moments led to the most extraordinary outcomes. Jennifer took a deep breath, aware that her next words would alter the course of her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The water glass in front of her caught the light, reflecting fractured rainbows across the white tablecloth, and she thought about how sometimes things had to break apart before they could create something beautiful. I want the contract in writing before I go upstairs, she said finally, and I want your lawyer present when I sign it. Christopher's face transformed with a smile that reached his eyes, genuine relief flooding his features. Done. Patricia, get Marcus on the phone immediately and have him bring the standard NDA and draft a temporary engagement contract. We have 9 minutes. As Patricia hurried away, muttering under her breath, Christopher extended his hand across the table. Thank you, Jennifer Morris, she startled. How did you know my name? He gestured subtly toward her phone, still lying face up on the table where Trevor's dismissive message glowed on the screen, her name visible in the contact heading. I'm observant. It served me well in business. Jennifer shook his hand, feeling the warmth and strength in his grip, and wondered what she had just agreed to. In the background, she could hear Patricia urgently speaking to someone about contracts and NDAs, while the other members of Christopher's team huddled together, clearly debating the sanity of their boss's spontaneous decision. Your grandmother, Jennifer said, pulling her hand back and trying to focus on practical matters. What's her name? What should I know about her? Victoria Hawthorne, Christopher replied, his expression growing more complex. She's 81, sharper than anyone I've ever met, and she can spot a lie from across a room. Which is why we need to get our story straight in the next 8 minutes. The private elevator to the restaurant's exclusive upper floor was decorated in rich mahogany and brass, but Jennifer barely registered the luxury surrounding her. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the leather portfolio containing the hastily drafted contract she had just signed. Marcus, Christopher's attorney, had appeared within minutes, a thin, efficient man who had explained the terms with remarkable clarity given the time constraints. The agreement was straightforward. Jennifer would pose as Christopher's fiancée for up to 6 weeks. She would attend necessary social functions, meet with his grandmother on scheduled occasions, and maintain the appearance of a genuine relationship. In return, she would receive $50,000 immediately, with the remaining $450,000 paid upon successful completion of the arrangement. All expenses would be covered, and she was prohibited from discussing the true nature of their relationship with anyone. "Remember," Christopher said quietly beside her, "we met 3 months ago at a gallery opening in Soho. You were there showcasing some design work for a client. I was immediately drawn to your perspective on modern art, and you pursued me relentlessly until I agreed to dinner," Jennifer added, reciting the story they had constructed during Marcus's contract preparation. "We discovered we both love obscure foreign films and hiking, though neither of us gets to do it as often as we'd like." "Perfect." Christopher adjusted his tie, and Jennifer noticed for the first time that his confident exterior masked genuine nervousness. "My grandmother will ask about your family. What should I know?" Jennifer's chest tightened. "My parents passed away 4 years ago. Car accident. I have a younger brother, Danny, who's finishing college in Boston. We're close, but he's focused on his studies, so we mostly communicate by phone." Something shifted in Christopher's expression, a softening that seemed entirely genuine. "I'm sorry about your parents." "Thank you," Jennifer said, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. Before she could say more, the elevator doors opened with a quiet chime. The private dining room was stunning, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city lights. A long table dominated the space, around which sat 7 distinguished individuals in business attire, along with an elderly woman at the head who could only be Victoria Hawthorne. She was smaller than Jennifer had imagined, but her presence filled the room. Silver hair swept into an elegant chignon, pearl earrings that probably cost more than Jennifer's car, and eyes the same piercing blue as her grandson's, eyes that were currently assessing Jennifer with an intensity that made her feel utterly transparent. "Christopher, darling," Victoria said, her voice crisp and cultured, "you're late, and you've brought a guest, I see." Christopher's hand found the small of Jennifer's back, a touch that felt surprisingly natural despite their arrangement. "Grandmother, board members, I apologize for my tardiness. I wanted to surprise you all." He paused, and Jennifer could feel the weight of every gaze in the room. "I'd like you to meet Jennifer Morris, my fiancée." The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer watched as shock rippled through the assembled group. One of the board members, a portly man with a grey beard, nearly dropped his wine glass. Patricia, who had arrived earlier to prepare them, looked like she might faint. But Victoria's expression remained inscrutable. She set down her fork with deliberate precision and studied Jennifer with those razor-sharp eyes. "Indeed. How fascinating. Come here, child. Let me see you properly." Jennifer's legs felt like water as she crossed the room, Christopher close beside her. Victoria gestured to the empty chairs to her right, and they sat. Up close, Jennifer could see the intelligence burning in the elderly woman's gaze, along with something else, a deep weariness that spoke of years carrying heavy responsibilities. "Jennifer Morris," Victoria repeated, as if tasting the name. "Tell me, my dear, how did you manage to capture my grandson's attention? He's been married to his work for so long, I'd begun to think he'd forgotten how to see anything else." Jennifer felt Christopher tense beside her, but she forced herself to smile naturally. "I think it was less about capturing his attention and more about not being impressed by his reputation. At the gallery where we met, I had no idea who he was. I criticized a piece he apparently admired, and we ended up debating art theory for an hour." A flicker of interest crossed Victoria's face. "You're an art critic, graphic designer," Jennifer corrected. "I run my own small business. Nothing as grand as Hawthorne Industries, but it's mine, and I'm proud of it." "Independence," Victoria mused. "I appreciate that. Christopher, why haven't you mentioned this wonderful development before now?" Christopher reached for Jennifer's hand, and she was struck by how naturally he played the role. "I wanted to be certain before involving the family. Jennifer isn't from our world, grandmother. I needed to know she could handle the pressure that comes with being associated with our name." "And can you?" Victoria asked Jennifer directly. "Handle the pressure, the scrutiny, the expectations?" Jennifer thought about her real life, the struggles of building a business from nothing, the weight of grief after losing her parents, the responsibility of supporting her brother through college. She met Victoria's gaze steadily. "I've handled worse than gossip and expectations, Mrs. Hawthorne. I lost both my parents 4 years ago and kept my business running while helping my brother through his grief. I learned that pressure either crushes you or teaches you what you're made of." For the first time, Victoria's expression softened. "I lost my husband 30 years ago, raised Christopher's father alone while running this company. You're right, my dear. Pressure reveals character." She glanced at her grandson. "She'll do, Christopher. She'll do very well." The dinner that followed was simultaneously easier and more challenging than Jennifer had anticipated. The board members, initially skeptical, gradually warmed to her as she answered their questions with honest directness. She spoke about her design work, her perspective on balancing ambition with personal life, and her views on corporate social responsibility, a topic that sparked an engaging debate with one of the directors, a sharp woman named Diane Crawford. But it was the small moments that truly tested Jennifer's performance. Christopher's hand resting on her shoulder as he poured her wine. The way he leaned close to whisper explanations about inside jokes or business references she wouldn't know. The casual intimacy of shared glances and knowing smiles. Every gesture had to appear natural, comfortable, real. What unsettled Jennifer most was how easy it felt. Christopher was attentive without being overbearing, charming without being false. He included her in conversations, deferred to her opinions, and created space for her to shine rather than merely existing as his accessory. It was, Jennifer realized with growing unease, exactly how she would want a real partner to behave. As dessert was served, Victoria tapped her spoon against her crystal glass. "I have an announcement," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. "As you all know, I've been hesitant about the Meridian merger. The financial projections are sound, but I've worried about Christopher's ability to manage such an expansion while maintaining the company values my late husband and I built." Christopher's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on his napkin. "However," Victoria continued, her gaze moving between her grandson and Jennifer, "seeing Christopher with Jennifer tonight has eased my concerns. A man who can commit to building a life partnership understands the kind of long-term thinking required for sustainable growth. I'm prepared to vote in favor of the merger." Relief washed over the faces around the table. Diane Crawford actually smiled, and the portly board member raised his glass in celebration. But Jennifer felt a knot forming in her stomach. This was real for these people. The merger, the business implications, the jobs and livelihoods that might depend on this decision, all of it hung on a lie she and Christopher were spinning. "There's just one condition," Victoria added, and the room fell silent again. "I want to host an engagement party, 2 weeks from tonight. Family, close friends, key business associates. If we're going to announce this merger, we should celebrate Christopher's engagement properly at the same time." Jennifer's heart sank. 2 weeks. A party, more people to deceive, more opportunities for their charade to unravel. "Of course, grandmother," Christopher said smoothly, though Jennifer could hear the tension beneath his calm exterior. "Jennifer and I would be honored." As the dinner concluded and goodbyes were exchanged, Victoria pulled Jennifer aside while Christopher spoke with the board members. The elderly woman's grip on Jennifer's arm was surprisingly strong. "You care for him," Victoria said quietly. It wasn't a question. Jennifer's breath caught. Don't bother denying it. I saw how you looked at him when he wasn't watching, like you were trying to solve a puzzle." Victoria's eyes held a knowing gleam. "My grandson is brilliant but emotionally guarded. His parents' divorce was ugly, and he spent his adult life building walls. If you're the one who can breach them, my dear, you'll have earned more than my approval." Before Jennifer could formulate a response, Victoria patted her arm and walked away, leaving Jennifer to wonder if the perceptive woman had somehow seen through their entire arrangement, or if she had simply misinterpreted what she saw. The elevator ride down was silent until they reached the ground floor. Christopher turned to Jennifer, his expression unreadable. "You were remarkable up there, truly. I don't think anyone suspected." "Your grandmother is sharper than you warned me," Jennifer said. "She liked you, that's significant." Christopher paused. The engagement party complicates things. That's an understatement. We'll need to spend more time together before then. Make the relationship convincing to people who've known me my entire life. He pulled out his phone. What's your schedule like this week? Jennifer thought about her current projects, her tight deadlines, the life she had built that was about to be turned completely upside down. I can make time. But Christopher, your grandmother said something that bothered me. She thinks this is real. She's making business decisions based on what she believes is genuine. Christopher's jaw tightened. The merger is sound regardless of my relationship status. Victoria knows that. She's just stubborn about wanting me to have a personal life, but we're lying to her. We're giving her what she needs to see to make the decision she already knows is right, Christopher corrected. Then his expression softened. But you're right. The deception sits heavily if you want to back out. I signed a contract, Jennifer interrupted. And besides, I took your money. $50,000 is already in my account. I'm committed. What she didn't say was that part of her, a growing dangerous part, wanted to continue not just for the money, but to understand the enigmatic man who had walked into her disastrous blind date and offered her a role in his complicated life. Christopher Hawthorne was nothing like she had expected, and that unexpected quality was far more intriguing than it should have been. The following week passed in a blur of carefully orchestrated encounters. Christopher had been right about needing to establish their relationship's credibility. Victoria had wasted no time spreading news of the engagement to family and friends, which meant Jennifer and Christopher needed to appear genuinely connected before the party. Their first public outing was a Sunday brunch at a trendy cafe in Greenwich Village, where they were conveniently spotted by several of Christopher's business acquaintances. Jennifer wore a casual sundress, and Christopher had traded his usual suits for jeans and a crisp white button-down that made him look younger, more approachable. They sat at an outdoor table, and Christopher taught her the subtle art of appearing intimate in public, the casual hand-holding, the leaning in close during conversation, the shared laughter over inside jokes they were rapidly creating. What surprised Jennifer was how much she genuinely enjoyed his company. Christopher was witty and well-read, with a self-deprecating humor that contradicted his powerful public persona. He asked thoughtful questions about her design work and actually listened to her answers, offering insights from his business experience that were helpful rather than condescending. "Tell me something real," Jennifer said during their third-stage date, an evening walk through Central Park. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Something not in the official Christopher Hawthorne biography. He was quiet for a moment, his hand warm in hers. "I wanted to be an architect," he finally said. "Before my father died, and I inherited the company at 26, I had already been accepted to graduate programs, had my whole life planned out differently. Do you regret it?" "Some days more than others," Christopher admitted. "I'm good at running Hawthorne Industries, maybe even great at it. But there's a difference between being good at something and loving it." Jennifer squeezed his hand. "That's the saddest thing I've heard in a long time." "Is it?" He glanced at her. "You built your own business doing exactly what you love. That takes remarkable courage." "Or remarkable stubbornness," Jennifer said with a small laugh. "My parents thought I was crazy to turn down a stable job at a big firm to go independent, but they supported me anyway, even when it meant I was eating ramen for dinner more nights than not." They had reached Bow Bridge, the ornate cast-iron structure arching gracefully over the lake. Christopher stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Jennifer, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." Her heart rate quickened. "Okay. Are you seeing anyone? Romantically, I mean. This arrangement requires a significant time commitment, and if there's someone in your life who might object—" "There's no one," Jennifer said quickly, thinking of Trevor's dismissive text message. "I've been too focused on work to date seriously. What about you?" "The same," Christopher said, but something flickered across his face, a shadow of old pain. "There was someone about 2 years ago. Caroline. We were together for 8 months before she accepted a position in London. And we tried long distance, but it didn't work. She wanted me to choose between her and the company. When I couldn't give her the answer she wanted immediately, she made the choice for both of us." He shook his head. "I don't blame her. Hawthorne Industries is an all-consuming mistress." Jennifer understood then why Christopher's grandmother was so insistent about him settling down. Victoria wasn't just concerned about appearances or business stability. She was worried about her grandson's isolation, the way he had let work become his entire identity. The engagement party loomed closer, and with it came increased scrutiny. Christopher's assistant, an efficient woman named Monica, coordinated with Jennifer to ensure their stories remained consistent. Jennifer learned the names of Christopher's cousins, his favorite restaurants, the vacation he had taken to Scotland 3 years ago, the name of his childhood dog. She shared details of her own life, her college roommate turned best friend Amanda, her brother Danny's obsession with marine biology, her parents' small bookstore that had been their pride and joy. What Jennifer hadn't anticipated was how the charade would affect her real life. Amanda called 5 times before Jennifer finally answered, unable to continue avoiding her friend's increasingly frantic messages. "You're engaged?" Amanda shrieked through the phone. "To Christopher Hawthorne? The billionaire Christopher Hawthorne? And you didn't think to mention this?" "It happened very quickly," Jennifer said carefully, hating the lie, but unable to break her contract's confidentiality clause. "Quickly? Jen, you were supposed to go on a blind date with Trevor. What happened?" "Trevor never showed up. Christopher did. And everything changed. At least that much was true." Amanda was silent for a long moment. "Are you happy? Really happy? Because this seems insane, even for you." Jennifer thought about the question. Was she happy? The money had already made a tangible difference. She had paid off her credit cards and put a deposit on office space. But beyond the financial relief, there was something else. The time spent with Christopher had become the highlight of her days. She found herself looking forward to their rehearsed dates, to the conversations that increasingly strayed from their scripted talking points into genuine exchanges. "I'm happy," she said, and realized with a jolt that it wasn't entirely a lie. The night before the engagement party, Christopher invited Jennifer to his penthouse apartment to finalize their preparations. The space was stunning, modern and minimalist with floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of the city skyline. But what caught Jennifer's attention were the small personal touches. A collection of architectural photography books, a vintage drafting table in the corner holding what appeared to be hand-drawn building sketches, a well-worn guitar leaning against the wall. "You play?" Jennifer asked, gesturing to the instrument. Christopher looked almost embarrassed. "Badly. It's a stress relief more than a skill." "Play something for me." "Jennifer, please, something real, not part of our performance." He hesitated, then picked up the guitar and settled onto the couch. His fingers found the strings, and he began playing a melody, simple, but hauntingly beautiful. Jennifer sat beside him, watching his face transform as he lost himself in the music. This was the man beneath the CEO facade, she realized, the one who had sacrificed his dreams to honor family obligations. When the song ended, Christopher set down the guitar and met her gaze. The air between them felt charged with something Jennifer couldn't name. "Tomorrow's going to be challenging," he said quietly. "There will be family members I haven't seen in years, friends who will ask difficult questions, business rivals looking for any sign of weakness." "We'll handle it," Jennifer said, with more confidence than she felt. "There's something else." Christopher's expression grew troubled. "My ex-girlfriend Caroline is back from London. She RSVP'd to the party." Jennifer's stomach dropped. "Why would she come to your engagement party?" "Caroline moves in the same social circles as my family. She's friends with my cousin Rachel. It would be more conspicuous if she didn't attend." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Jennifer had learned meant he was genuinely stressed. "She'll be looking for any crack in our facade. She knows me better than almost anyone." "Then we won't give her any cracks to find," Jennifer said firmly, even as anxiety coiled in her chest. Christopher reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Jennifer's ear, the gesture tender and unexpected. "How did I get so lucky to find you that night?" Jennifer's breath caught. His hand lingered near her face, and she could see the conflict in his eyes, the same conflict she felt growing within herself. This was supposed to be business, a transaction. 6 weeks of pretending in exchange for life-changing money. But somewhere between the scripted dates and the genuine conversations, the lines had begun to blur. "Christopher," she whispered, unsure what she meant to say. He leaned closer, and Jennifer's heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't in their contract. This wasn't part of the performance. But when his lips met hers, gentle and questioning, Jennifer forgot about contracts and charades. and all the logical reasons why this was a terrible idea. The kiss was brief, barely more than a moment, but when Christopher pulled back, his expression was stricken. "I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. You're here because of a business arrangement, and I don't apologize," Jennifer interrupted, her own emotions in turmoil. "I kissed you back." They stared at each other, the unspoken acknowledgement hanging between them that their fake engagement had just become infinitely more complicated. Jennifer's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. It was a message from Monica, with final details about tomorrow's party schedule. "I should go," Jennifer said, standing on unsteady legs. "It's late, and we both need to be sharp tomorrow." Christopher walked her to the door, the easy intimacy they had developed over the past week now wrapped in awkward tension. "Jennifer, about what just happened. We'll talk after the party," she said. "Let's just get through tomorrow first." But as Jennifer rode the elevator down from Christopher's penthouse, she knew that everything had shifted. The engagement party would require them to convince a room full of people that they were in love. The terrifying part was that Jennifer was no longer entirely sure she would be acting. The following evening arrived with cruel swiftness. Jennifer stood in front of her bathroom mirror, smoothing down the sapphire blue gown Christopher had sent over. Designer, perfectly fitted, probably worth more than her monthly rent. Her hair was swept into an elegant updo, and the engagement ring Christopher had given her, a stunning emerald-cut diamond that was supposedly a Hawthorne family heirloom, sparkled on her finger. She barely recognized herself. The car Christopher sent arrived promptly at 7. During the ride to the venue, an exclusive event space overlooking the Hudson River, Jennifer rehearsed her responses to anticipated questions, trying to calm her racing heart. Everything rode on tonight. The merger, Christopher's relationship with his grandmother, her own financial future, and now potentially something neither of them had planned for, real feelings emerging from their elaborate pretense. Christopher was waiting at the entrance, devastating in a tailored tuxedo. When he saw her, his expression shifted into something raw and unguarded. Before he masked it with his public smile, he offered his arm. "Ready to convince the world we're madly in love?" Jennifer took his arm, feeling the solid warmth of him beside her. "Ready as I'll ever be." They entered together, and the party unfolded in a whirlwind of introductions and congratulations. Victoria held court near the windows, her proud smile genuine as she introduced Jennifer to various family members and business associates. Christopher's cousin Rachel, a striking woman with calculating eyes, assessed Jennifer with barely concealed curiosity. And then, across the crowded room, Jennifer saw her. Caroline was beautiful in a classic way, with platinum blonde hair and the kind of effortless elegance that came from a lifetime of privilege. She was watching Christopher with an expression that made Jennifer's chest tighten. "She's here," Jennifer murmured. Christopher's arm tensed beneath her hand. "I see her." Caroline began making her way toward them, and Jennifer felt Christopher's hand find hers, their fingers interlacing. Whatever happened next would determine whether their carefully constructed facade could withstand its first real test. Caroline approached with the confidence of someone who had once held an intimate place in Christopher's life. Up close, she was even more striking, her green eyes sharp and assessing as they moved between Christopher and Jennifer. "Christopher," she said warmly, leaning in to kiss his cheek. "Congratulations. This is quite the surprise, Caroline." Christopher's voice was carefully neutral. "Thank you for coming. I'd like you to meet Jennifer Morris, my fiancée." Caroline extended a perfectly manicured hand. "Jennifer, what a pleasure. I must admit, I'm fascinated to meet the woman who accomplished what I couldn't, getting Christopher Hawthorne to commit." The barb was delivered with a smile, but Jennifer felt its sting nonetheless. She shook Caroline's hand firmly. "Sometimes it's about timing. Christopher and I met when we were both ready for something real." "How romantic," Caroline said, her tone suggesting anything but romance. "And how did you two meet? Christopher was always so consumed by work when we were together. I can't imagine him taking time to date." "We met at an art gallery," Jennifer said, maintaining her composure despite feeling like she was being interrogated. "I had no idea who he was at first. We spent the evening debating the merits of contemporary art." "How unlike Christopher to spend an evening on anything unrelated to quarterly reports," Caroline mused. She turned to Christopher. "You've changed, then. Finally learned to separate work from life?" Christopher's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Jennifer helped me see that there's more to life than board meetings and profit margins. How transformative. Caroline's smile didn't reach her eyes. You know, Christopher, when I asked you to make more room in your life 2 years ago, you said the company had to come first. I'm curious what made Jennifer's request different from mine. The tension was palpable. Jennifer could feel other guests beginning to notice their conversation, Victoria's sharp gaze landing on them from across the room. This was the moment Caroline had been waiting for, a chance to expose the cracks in their relationship, to prove that Christopher hadn't really changed at all. But before Christopher could respond, Jennifer stepped closer to him, her hand finding his chest in a gesture of natural intimacy. I never asked Christopher to choose, she said quietly but firmly. I understand that Hawthorne Industries is part of who he is. I fell in love with all of him, including his dedication to his work. The difference isn't that he changed for me, it's that I never required him to be someone he's not. Something flickered in Caroline's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or reassessment. Christopher's hand covered Jennifer's, pressing it against his heart, and when Jennifer looked up at him, the gratitude and something deeper in his eyes made her breath catch. "Excuse us, Caroline," Christopher said, his gaze never leaving Jennifer's face. "I'd like to dance with my fiancé." He led Jennifer to the dance floor as a string quartet began playing a slow waltz. His arm wrapped around her waist, drawing her close, and they began to move together. The mechanics of the dance were simple, but everything else about the moment felt impossibly complex. "That was remarkable," Christopher whispered against her ear. "What you said to Caroline. You defended me without making me seem weak." "I meant it," Jennifer said, and realized with a jolt that she had. "So you shouldn't have to apologize for caring about your work. You just needed someone who understood that." Christopher pulled back slightly to look at her, and Jennifer saw something shift in his expression, a wall crumbling, a decision being made. "Jennifer, we need to talk. After tonight, we need to have an honest conversation about what's happening between us." "I know," she whispered. The rest of the party passed in a haze. Jennifer smiled and laughed and accepted congratulations from people whose names she would never remember. Victoria gave a touching speech about family and love that made Jennifer's guilt about their deception burn even hotter. Christopher's cousin Rachel pulled Jennifer aside to welcome her to the family with what seemed like genuine warmth, and through it all, Jennifer felt the weight of the truth pressing down on her. She had fallen for Christopher Hawthorne. Not the billionaire CEO, but the man who played guitar badly to relieve stress, who had given up his dreams of architecture to honor his father's legacy, who kissed her like she was something precious and rare. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Victoria approached them with a satisfied smile. "A perfect evening," she declared. "The merger announcement will be made next week, and everyone will know it's because my grandson has finally found happiness." Jennifer felt Christopher tense beside her. Victoria noticed, too, her sharp eyes narrowing slightly. "Is something wrong? Grandmother, could we speak privately?" Christopher asked. "You, Jennifer, and I?" Victoria's expression grew serious. "Of course, the study upstairs." Jennifer's heart pounded as they climbed the stairs to a small, elegant office. This was it. Christopher was going to confess everything. The engagement party had been successful, but he was going to come clean about their arrangement. Jennifer braced herself for Victoria's reaction, for the inevitable anger and disappointment. Christopher closed the door and turned to face his grandmother. "Victoria, there's something you need to know about Jennifer and me." The elderly woman settled into a leather chair, her gaze moving between them. "I'm listening." "Our engagement," Christopher paused, running a hand through his hair. "It started as a business arrangement. I needed to convince you I was settled enough to handle the merger. Jennifer needed financial security. We met the night of the dinner with the board, and I made her an absurd proposal to pretend to be my fiancé. The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer watched Victoria's face, expecting fury, but the woman's expression remained oddly calm. "I see," Victoria said finally. "And you're confessing this now because—" "Because it's not pretend anymore," Christopher said, looking at Jennifer with an intensity that made her knees weak. "At least not for me. I've spent the past 2 weeks falling in love with this woman, and I can't keep lying to you about how we started when what I feel now is completely real." Jennifer's breath stopped. Christopher turned to her fully, taking both her hands in his. "I know this breaks our contract," he continued, his voice rough with emotion. "I know you agreed to 6 weeks and we're barely halfway through, but I can't keep pretending this is business. Jennifer, you walked into my life on what should have been your worst night, and somehow you've become the best part of my days. The conversations we have, the way you challenge me, the way you see the person beneath the reputation, I don't want to lose that when our arrangement ends." "Christopher," Jennifer started, but he pressed on. "I'm asking you, Jennifer Morris, not as part of a contract, but as a man who has genuinely fallen for you. Would you consider making this engagement real? No timeline, no pressure. Just give us a chance to see where this could go." Tears pricked Jennifer's eyes. "You're serious. Completely serious." He squeezed her hands. "And if you can't, if this is too much or too soon or you simply don't feel the same way, I'll honor our original agreement. You'll get your full payment and we'll part as friends. But I had to tell you the truth." Jennifer looked at Victoria, who was watching them with an expression of profound satisfaction. "You knew," Jennifer said suddenly. "From the beginning, you knew something was off." Victoria's smile was enigmatic. "My dear, I've been navigating business and family politics for 60 years. Of course I suspected, but I also saw something neither of you seemed to realize. You were perfect for each other. Christopher needed someone who valued him for who he is, not what he's worth. And you, my dear, needed someone who could appreciate your strength and independence. So the merger," Christopher began, "was always going to go through," Victoria interrupted. "The financials were sound, but I wanted to ensure my grandson didn't wake up at 70, surrounded by success and utterly alone. I simply provided motivation for you to find what you were both too stubborn to seek on your own." Christopher stared at his grandmother in astonishment. "You manipulated us." "I gave you an opportunity," Victoria corrected. "What you did with it was entirely your choice." She stood, smoothing her elegant dress. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a car waiting." "Jennifer, I expect you for tea on Thursday. We have wedding plans to discuss, real ones this time." She swept from the room, leaving Christopher and Jennifer alone. They looked at each other, and Jennifer started to laugh, a slightly hysterical sound that Christopher quickly joined. "Did your 81-year-old grandmother just admit to orchestrating this entire thing?" Jennifer asked. "I believe she did," Christopher said, shaking his head in wonder. He grew serious again, stepping closer. "But that doesn't change my question. Jennifer, these past 2 weeks with you have been the most genuine thing in my life. I know it's fast, and I know it's complicated, but I don't want to lose you when our contract ends." Jennifer thought about Trevor's dismissive text message, about sitting alone in that restaurant feeling utterly rejected. She thought about how Christopher had walked in and changed everything, not just with his money or his offer, but with his honesty, his vulnerability, his willingness to let her see beneath the polished exterior. "I fell for you too," she admitted. "Somewhere between the stage dates and rehearsed stories, I stopped acting. When I defended you to Caroline tonight, I wasn't protecting our arrangement. I was protecting someone I care about." Christopher's face transformed with a smile that was purely, radiantly happy. "So that's a yes? You'll give us a real chance?" "On one condition," Jennifer said. "No more contracts, no more pretending. If we're doing this, we do it honestly, as equals. And if it doesn't work out, we walk away without obligations." "Deal," Christopher said immediately. He pulled her close, and this time when he kissed her, there was no hesitation, no apology. It was a kiss full of promise and possibility, of genuine emotion no longer constrained by their business arrangement. When they finally pulled apart, Jennifer laughed softly. "Your grandmother is going to be insufferable about this." "Absolutely insufferable," Christopher agreed. "She'll probably claim she engineered our entire love story." "Didn't she, though?" Christopher considered this. "Perhaps. But I'm the one who chose to walk over to your table that night. And you're the one who said yes to my insane proposal. Victoria just provided the circumstances." They left the venue together, hand in hand, stepping out into the cool night air. The city stretched out before them, full of lights and possibilities. Jennifer thought about how drastically her life had changed in just 2 weeks, not because of the money, though that had certainly helped, but because she had been brave enough to take a chance on something that seemed impossibly crazy. "What do we do now?" she asked. Christopher smiled, bringing her hand to his lips. "Now, we start over. properly. I'd like to take you on a real first date. No scripts, no performances, just you and me." "I'd like that," Jennifer said. As Christopher's driver pulled up to take them home, Jennifer caught sight of their reflection in the car window. Two people who had found each other in the most improbable way, who had pretended at love until it became real. She thought about the blind date that never happened, about Trevor's rejection that had seemed so devastating at the time. If he had shown up that night, she would never have been sitting alone when Christopher walked in. She would never have agreed to his outrageous proposal. She would never have discovered that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. 3 months later, Jennifer stood in her new office space, bright and airy, with room for the assistant she had finally hired and proper equipment for her expanding design business. The money from her arrangement with Christopher had transformed her professional life, but it was Christopher himself who had transformed everything else. They had dated properly, taking time to build a foundation of genuine trust and affection. Christopher had been true to his word about making room in his life for more than work, attending her design showcases, and meeting Danny when he visited from Boston. Jennifer had met Christopher's extended family, had tea with Victoria every Thursday, and slowly learned to navigate the complexities of his world while maintaining her own independence. The Meridian merger had been successfully completed, and Hawthorne Industries was thriving. But more importantly, Christopher was thriving, lighter, more present, rediscovering aspects of himself he had buried beneath years of obligation. Her phone buzzed with a text message. "Christopher, dinner tonight? I have something important to ask you." Jennifer smiled, remembering another night when someone had asked her an important question in a restaurant. She typed back, "As long as you promise to actually show up this time." Christopher's response was immediate. "I'll be the one who can't wait to see you always." Jennifer looked at the emerald ring on her finger, no longer a prop, but a symbol of something real and hard-won. She thought about how life had a strange way of redirecting you precisely when you thought you were lost, how rejection could be the first step toward finding exactly where you belonged. Her business line rang, a potential new client. Jennifer answered with confidence, ready to discuss design concepts and creative vision. After the call, she would meet Christopher for dinner. Tomorrow, she had tea with Victoria. The day after, Danny was visiting to meet Christopher's architect friend, who had offered to mentor him in structural engineering. Her life was full and complicated, and wonderfully, terrifyingly real. And it had all started because she had been brave enough to say